We began with two guys talking about a milkmaid. From there, we did our simple annotations, keeping it real simple, generating our gut responses, figuring out where we might stand on the topic, and also what the subject is, and the argument of these two guys talking about this milkmaid. Then we did our complex annotation, everything in orange you see here, basically looking at the rhetorical devices these guys are using, how they are using them in tandem with this subject, with their argument, what effects are they really using in order to be persuasive. Then we wrote our intro paragraph, starting specific and then getting super specific, coming up with our 3 hypotheses and our significance factor. And now it is time to write a body paragraph. So if we get rid of all of this colorful prettiness and leave ourselves with this over here, our 3 hypotheses, aka our 3 body paragraphs, these are going to be on allusions, puns, and that parallel style. Today we're going to work on allusions. And our other objective as we write this body paragraph, we have to keep this significance factor down here in mind. Basically, we want to write this body paragraph with the objective of describing the significance of it. So we will constantly be keeping this significance factor in mind. Here's my first sentence. Basically, I like to start by introducing a problem, and for practical purposes also I have said allude. The authors allude to looming anxiety, so it's clear I'm going to be talking about the allusion. And I've also done this other thing which I call creating empty space, something I'll describe in more detail in a video in the future. But basically, creating empty space means starting off with an abstraction, not a generic ass abstraction like, democracy or beauty, something specific yet still abstract. So in this case, I'm saying their tone, which has a peaceful quality and a solace-seeking quality, and there is still an allusion to a looming anxiety. So that's the empty space I've created. Okay, next up, as you can see here in the green, I have filled up that empty space by offering a real example of what this abstraction really is all about. It is basically this example from the text of how when the milkmaid puts her hands on those cow udders, the milk that comes out is the whiter or the sweeter. And that's showing, peaceful, solace-seeking and all that. The authors they straight up undermine it by describing how her milking process is sweeter, makes the milk sweeter, because, quote, never came almond glove or aromatic ointment on her palm to taint it. That to me is the looming anxiety. It's not a huge punch in your face of like, oh shit, look at all this almond glove action going on, ruining everything. It is more like, no, our girl's good because she doesn't use this stuff, which hints at a looming anxiety. Okay, here's my next part. Like I mentioned, you always want to show that you're in tune with your significance factor and that you're in tune with the subject that the authors are talking about. So here I'm saying, hey, this is actually an allusion to city life. And this would have been a source of anxiety during the author's time. You look at the text details, which is a thing you'll need to do for the rhetorical analysis. It says the date of publication is 1615. You should be coming into the exam with some general knowledge of the different literary periods. So you should know 1615, all right, that's the Renaissance in England, a time of cultural progress due to the rise of cities. And yeah, I should also mention, even in that first sentence we started with, we are tapped into that significance factor even there from sentence 1. We're hinting at it with the problem, with that looming anxiety, with the duality of peace and anxiety that this sketch clearly has. Okay, now this next part, often tricky because you need to connect the significance, the overall subject they're talking about, with specific rhetoric that these writers are using at the language level. So you got to go right down in there into the text at the level of words, showing words, quoting them, analyzing that, and tying that into the broader, more conceptual subject and significance factor of your essay. So here I have basically started that off. I'm saying that the authors are here to champion the pastoral over city life. So I'm clearly showing where they are in the debate between country versus city. And you've got to throw in your quotes in there too. You've got to quote the text. If you don't have quotes in there, that's sort of just a red flag, to use a buzz term of the day, that the graders are going to be like, whoa, there's no quotes from the actual text. Did this guy even read it? Do they even know how to integrate a quotation? So yeah, as you can see, I have also done another mini version of creating empty space here in this one sentence. And that is this idea that the authors are championing pastoral lifestyles. And then I offer something more concrete along those lines later in the sentence when I say almond gloves and aromatic ointments are fake and overcomplicated means to beautify oneself. When the authors say this is them championing pastoral lifestyles. Okay, another important thing you need to do in each body paragraph is connect the very specific, languagey, words-based stuff you're talking about, link it to a broader claim that the authors have and another rhetorical device that they're using. And, if you do this strategically, you can line it up so that this is how you flow now into your next paragraph where you're going to talk about that other rhetorical device, but we'll leave that out for now. So here you can see I have described their more general claim of the milkmaid being far from making herself beautiful by art. And once again, every single abstract term you throw out there or you kind of bring focus on, always make it concrete, give it your own definition in your own words, because language can be so goddamn vague that you want to avoid any kind of misunderstandings or the grader scratching their head and being like, what the hell is this person saying? So here, far from making yourself beautiful by art, we looked at our notes from before and we know, oh yeah, we sort of already defined this. We've done the work there already. Art in this case, it signals us to artifice or the needless representation of real beauty rather than real beauty itself. Preferably, I would actually italicize representation to show emphasis there. Since this will likely be handwritten when you're doing it, you can instead underline it so that the graders can get the emphasis that you're going for. Try not to underline like crazy, do it if you feel like when speaking it just makes more sense if someone gives emphasis there. Because here we're talking kind of about the difference between needless representation of real beauty rather than real beauty itself. Because like I mentioned back in the brainstorming phase, this milkmaid sketch sort of is a rumination on art, a rumination on what constitutes good art, how much of art is just straight up artifice, and what does that mean for our whole friggin' understanding of art. Okay, and here's our last sentence of the paragraph. Tapping into your awareness of the time period, 1615, your awareness of the context of the text details. You also want to check, do you see a relationship between sentence 1 and your final sentence? So our first sentence was talking about the looming anxiety and how that kind of is putting a bit of shade on that peace and solace-seeking. So now we have tied that. We have said that this shade, this bad shade we don't want, or the authors don't want, is due to, if not newer, then more prominent perception of beauty in that time, a growing perception of beauty contrary to the simple pastoral stuff, other beauty which is basically more artificial stuff, and losing your connection to reality a bit more. Okay, just a few last things I want to point out for you guys. First off, if you look at my first sentence, I've got a bit of seduction going on. Mostly peaceful and solace-seeking. I'm kind of throwing in these L's that connect to one another, and these E sounds peaceful, seeking. You also see in the next sentence, I've got some, more of a ooh and ah sort of thing. They do allude to a looming anxiety. Believe it or not, these sorts of things do work. They play a bit of a mind trick on your grader to make them just feel good reading something. If you really have a good aptitude for language and a good aptitude for repeating letters in a way that lets your writing flow, do it. Do it here because, subliminally it will put your grader in a good mood. Okay, next thing I want to mention is I made a mistake. I wrote fingers and makes. I don't want to get into the grammar bullcrap of this, but basically when you have something that's plural, like fingers, and you're describing them doing something, you want to make that verb singular, and vice versa. Why is this a rule? I have no freaking idea, but that's the way it is. And I didn't abide by that grammar rule or norm or whatever you want to call it. I've got a plural matched with a plural rather than a plural with a singular. So I screwed up, but I'm going to tell you guys, don't worry, because if you look at the fine print on the AP language exam, in their grading of the essays, they will grade it as a draft. This means they are by no means seeking perfection in your writing. They're looking at a nicely composed draft that is going to have some errors in it. If you have a lot of errors, you'll get points docked off for that. If you have a couple here and there, it's not going to affect your grade all that much, if at all. And especially if you look at my error here, it is kind of hard to make out because I have an interruption in between them, right? When milking a cow, that's the interruption. And I'm quoting this old school syntax, this old school way of speaking that the author has used here, and that kind of further hides my error. So all I'm gonna say is don't worry. Okay, next up, there's a lot of rhetorical devices out there that it's really easy to just sound super basic when you're talking about them. The most infamous one I'd say is repetition. Allusion is not quite as easy, but it's still one of the easier ones to sound basic when you're talking about, because all you're going to be like is, oh, I see it, the allusion to so-and-so. Hey, guess what? The author just alluded to that. Okay, see you later. That's not enough. Every allusion that each writer does is done with specificity in mind. They're doing the allusion in their own unique way, with their own unique set of parameters, their own unique situation. They're describing their own unique images, and each of those things offers a chance for you to describe the complexity of the situation. So, in this case, I focused a bit more on the word tainting. How it's the idea that, yes, they are alluding to city life and how they don't like it, but they are also describing how it is a thing that taints the pastoral. And this is all tied into that broader text detail thing, the year 1615, the Renaissance in England. That's one thing I wanted to talk about there. The other is, this will often happen, in the middle section where the analysis is really taking place. You might feel when you're rereading it like, uh-oh, I feel like I could have gone a bit deeper, or I don't know if I've established the connection, between almond gloves and aromatic ointments and city life. Uh-oh, I'm worried I haven't quite established that connection. Well, just like I wrote up here in red, don't worry, because we'll get a final chance to tie up any loose ends in the conclusion to show to the grader, like, yeah, I do know how this connection works. Because again, you're under time pressure, you're going to be rushing, you just got to fly through there, get it done, move on to the next paragraph, read it over, look at the loose ends, and then the conclusion can help save your ass. And we'll talk about the conclusion in another video. Okay, I'd say the last thing I'm going to point out here is, if you look at the end of this paragraph, I have different levels of descriptions. Different levels of interruptions even when I'm trying to describe whatever in more detail. So you'll see the first one is I am describing the nature of this claim. I'm saying that it is a more general claim. Okay, and it's just kind of quickly tucked in there. It doesn't really disrupt much of the flow or much of that sentence, and there's no punctuation needed. Okay, the next thing I've described here in a bit more detail is artifice. I've used an interruption, a full-blown interruption for that one, which is the needless representation of real beauty. And lastly, I have a quick interruption that stands out a bit more than more general claim, which I wrote earlier. And here I'm talking about artful, more deceptive beauty. Beauty is the word I'm describing more here. It's quick, like the first one I said, more general, but it is more interruptive because I've got it between those commas. So I have three different kinds of abstract term descriptors here, and the grader is going to see that and think, oh, this guy has the ability to switch up his style, to switch up his technique, to keep the writing fresh and to not lull me out, and that's going to all factor into your overall grade. So it is, once again, another language flex. And this is it. This is how you body a body.